I want to remind you all that this meeting is being recorded by Bernardston-Northfield Community Television for future broadcast on your local cable channel. This meeting may also be streamed live on their Facebook page when able. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Is this working? Okay. I'd like to start at the beginning. The FY18 audit confirmed a deficit of $543,264. The food service fund had a deficit of $269,202. Circuit breaker had a deficit of $46,852. General fund had a deficit of $227,210. The FY19 budget revised and voted on September 13, 2018 was at $14,223,865. The Department of Revenue stepped in last April to review our records, which prompted Chapter 295 of the Acts of 2018 to assist our district with the deficit. The challenges that our district faces are declining enrollments over the past 12 years. We've lost 363 students over that time period. The towns have struggled to support the district budget. We've been addressing the financial issues required by the Department of Revenue and making budget cuts while sustaining quality programs for our students. You can see the enrollment numbers, the amount of students we've lost and gained throughout the years from 2006 to 2019, which again reflects the 12-year decrease of 363 students. Talk a little bit about the process. The Director of Finance rebuilt the budget infrastructure from the ground up to integrate all 16 categories in a very detailed and transparent way that will be able to be used for years to come. The Director of Finance worked with myself, the school principals, and other administrative staff to complete all sections of the budget. This happened in our administrative team meetings and on one-on-one meetings. Our revenue projections from the FY20 governor's proposed budget were used to establish our revenue budget, but adjustments were made to school choice revenue as well as transportation based on knowledge the district has about graduating seniors, enrollment trends, and current transportation costs. Principals and department heads created a budget after getting input from their staff. The department requests were compared to our projected revenues to determine increases required of the towns to support the budget. The Budget Subcommittee met weekly on Wednesdays starting January 2nd with the Director of Finance, myself, and administrative and department staff regarding all sections. The Director of Finance met with all 4 towns' finance committees to discuss baseline budget projections prior to the budget process beginning. Here's the overview. The town requests for a 0% increase were taken into consideration as administration worked to make reductions. The department requested budget would require a 7.68% increase to the towns. After the administrative team worked together to make reductions, we have reduced the increase to the towns to 1.65%. The Budget Subcommittee and School Committee reviewed all lines and present to you the administration recommended budget totaling $14,272,210. This budget represents a net increase of $48,345 from FY19, the budget that was voted on September 13, 2018, which is an increase to the towns of $151,735.
So I'm going to review a couple of the slides summarizing our revenue and expense budget, and then I'm going to turn it back over to John to talk about each of these sections individually and what makes up the increases and decreases that comprise the FY20 budget. So looking at this sheet, you can see our town assessments. The department requested original would have been a 7.68% increase to the towns after the administrative team reviewed and made cuts necessary of $555,189. We are proposing a budget that would be an increase to the towns at 1.65%. I won't go through every single line here, but there was backup that was distributed at our last school committee meeting to support the governor's FY 2020 budget. We can also post that on our website, and it's also available through DESE. Our Medicaid and interest income, we level funded from the prior year. We decreased interest income slightly, and our tuition and fees reflects the number of students currently enrolled, as well as those graduating that are visiting our school or attending our school from Vernon. The things that make up the revenue are, first, the town assessments. When I originally created this PowerPoint, I did not have those calculations complete. However, I did finish them today, and that is the supplement packet that you have with the replacement slide that has the breakdown of the $9,357,510. And I do want to just say that for those of you that attended the school committee meeting last week, the assessment numbers that were presented was a preliminary, strictly based on the 5-year enrollment percentage. However, the state's foundation aid and minimum contribution that is allocated to the towns is based on foundation enrollment. So as you can see, if you look at the back side of that page that has the FY 2020 assessments, the foundation enrollment percentages vary from the 5-year enrollment percentages, and that will be discussed and talked about when we talk about reviewing and revising our regional agreement to get those in line. We are proposing that moving forward, we would do the same as the state and base our numbers on foundation enrollment. So that's where the differences came into play that were issues at the school committee meeting. So I just kind of wanted to clear that up. I won't go through that whole sheet. Most of you are used to seeing this, but we've allocated out the transportation, the above minimum contribution, and the minimum contributions are directly from DESE's website, which you also have the backup on in this particular sheet. This is just another 5-year enrollment average that shows you that Bernardston's percentage this year is 35.82%, Leiden's is 6.44%, and Northfield is 4.82%, and Warwick's is 9.32%. And if any of you have any questions on this, feel free to contact me or ask questions later. Our state aid piece of our revenue budget is just outlined above here, so you can kind of see that particular section by itself. And then the last piece of the revenue budget is our local aid, which is our tuition and our interest income. So pretty self-explanatory. We just broke it out for you so you can see the different sections. I did add $1 to interest revenue because there was rounding. If anybody wants to know why there's a $1 difference there. And then you can just see that these 3 sections of revenue, the town assessments, state aid, and local revenues make up our $14,272,210 budget that we present to you this evening. Moving on to the expenditure, we are voting this particular budget by category. This was recommended to us by DESE and DOR. These are the categories amongst which the school committee votes transfers at this time. So this is a summary. This is not a line by line. The line by line will be posted on our website once the school committee votes that on March 6th. And it was gone over in detail at our last school committee meeting as well. As you can see, the department requested original budget was $14,827,398, and that has been decreased by $555,189 to come to the revenue or to the expenditure budget that we proposed to you this evening. I'm going to turn it back over to John. You'll notice that at the top of each of these slides is just a recap of the summary for every single one of these lines. It shows you the FY19 budget, the department requested, the administration recommended, if there was any administrative changes, and what the changes from FY19.
Okay, so we'll start with the athletics slide. Athletic transportation was under budgeted in the past. It's been updated to account for subsidy from user fee and gate fee receipts. Referees had a minor increase due to contractual obligations. The coaches were moved from the PVRS teacher salaries line to correct the budget category. The athletic director stipend previously in the PVRS salaries was moved to correct the budget category as well. Central office. Curriculum director grant writer position is being restored. It wasn't filled when the position became vacant. Financial overseer decreased $20,000 per the overseer recommendation based on number of hours anticipated. Treasurer expenses are decreasing to be in line with the needs. School committee expense is increasing due to student activity audit, which is required every 3 years. Our attorney fees, our counsel fees are increasing because the retainer is going up $200 per month. Special reserve contribution and debt service are requirements of legislation capturing 3% interest rather than 5%. To decrease school lunch subsidy to we decreased the school lunch subsidy to $25,000 based on projections and better management of staffing and food costs. Allocated a portion of the financial clerk's salary to early childhood based on duties performed. The director of finance was full-time for full fiscal year, was not full-time until September 2018. And the superintendent travel increased due to contractual obligations. The elementary administration, removing the stipend model for principal position at Warwick, restoring a half-time administration assistant in Warwick, which was cut in the FY19 from a full-time down to 0. Restored the principal travel lines to be in compliance with her obligations. The administrative assistant is increasing due to contractual obligations. All elementary principals due for contract renewal, but 0 increases budgeted at this time. The elementary instructional assistant, reduction of 2 full-time classroom instructional assistants at Bernardston. One of those is retiring. Reduction of 0.6 full-time classroom instructional assistant at Warwick Community School. Full-time classroom, 0.6 full-time classroom instructional assistant at Warwick. And instructional assistant salaries are increasing due to contractual obligations. Elementary salaries. The salaries are increasing per contractual obligations. Restoring elementary PE teacher at 0.4 at NES, Northfield Elementary. We're restoring elementary music district-wide. It will no longer be shared with the PVRS staff. Co-curricular stipends are moved into the proper category for elementary STEM Raise Club. Substitutes by school decreased, which are offset by creating district-wide long-term substitute budget. We're holding off on restoring an additional half-time tech integration specialist. Elementary supplies. The shared health supplies increased due to replacing expiring AEDs in each school. Textbook and library supply lines were restored, which were previously cut. ELA supplies increased due to ELA curriculum updates needed, and other supply lines decreased by principals based on the needs of each school. Facilities. Custodial salaries are carried forward savings captured due to staff changes in FY19, increasing due to contractual obligations, retiring full-time custodian at PVRS not being replaced. There's a fuel savings realized as we locked in for $1.93 per gallon in the FY19 rate is 2.67. Light and power is increasing based on Eversource National Grid projections and increasing energy rates. Water is increasing slightly due to water testing. Telephone is a savings realized due to change in vendors in FY19. The maintenance of the building's equipment supplies are adjusted in coordination with facilities director based on the needs at each building. Insurance and benefits. Split our categories for active, retiree, 403B plan administration, and pension costs. Unemployment is increasing due to rate change from 0.5% for calendar year 2018 to 0.9% for calendar year 2019, and it's capped at 0.9%. Workers' comp is decreasing due to lower staff numbers. Insurance, the net increases are 0% premium increases. Decrease of $248,923 in school choice revenue anticipated for FY20, which is used as an expense offset. There's 17 graduating school choice students and 6 Warwick 6th graders, and we took this into factor that historically most of the 6th graders do go back to Maher for 7th grade. Professional development. We reallocated professional development to accurate lines based on usage and purpose. Principal dues subscriptions increased to be in compliance with contractual obligations. District mentoring was adjusted to be in line with DESE requirements for current staff, budgeted for 2 potential new teachers joining the district. Overall, decrease due to change in contractual obligations for course reimbursement. PVRS administration. Administration assistant salaries are increasing due to contractual obligations. Reduction of the dean of students position and the travel. Principal salary reduced to actual, contract is up for renewal. PVRS salaries. Salaries overall increasing due to contractual obligations. Reduction of 1 full-time specials teacher. Reduction of 0.5 guidance counselor. Reduction of co-curricular stipends for clubs no longer active. And the coaches were moved from the PVRS salaries to the athletics line. PVRS supplies. Textbooks decreased due to less teacher requests. The guidance textbooks decreased due to lower needs for materials moving to online resources. Library supplies are restoring with small increase. Educational equipment increased to include 2 Red Cat hearing systems and purchasing 2 larger pieces of band equipment, which replaced payment on student instruments previously in the budget. Other supplies decreased per principal's recommendation, staff requests decreased. Reallocated graduation supplies to other student activity line to be in line with purpose of expenditures. Special education salaries overall increasing due to contractual obligations. Special needs computer support programming moves special ed specific tech programs to be in line with usage and purpose. Guidance textbooks decreased to lower need for materials moving to online resources. Oh, sorry, that was a misprint there from the previous slide. Special ed transportation increased to be in line with student needs and annual increases in expenditures. Special ed tuitions overall decreasing due to 2 graduating students, anticipated tuition increases for FY20 for other placements. PVRS, there's a reduction of a 0.5 special needs teacher. ELL reduced from 1 full-time to 0.3. Bernardston Elementary School instructional assistant reduction of 3 full-time and 1 additional requested IA not filled. Pearl Rose instructional assistant reduction of 0.5. Northfield Elementary instructional assistant reduction of 3. Warwick Community reduction of 1 full-time because the student moved. Note all special ed instructional assistant reductions were reviewed with the special ed director in line with student required services for FY20. Technology, the annual tech renewals reviewed by the technology and brought in line with needs of schools across the district. Technology hardware overall increasing, significantly cut in FY19. We're moving towards a one-to-one student device initiative, replacing aging teacher devices and other hardware. We're on a 3-year implementation plan across the district. Creating technology replacements as part of our operating budget rather than capital expenditures. And this allows the district to maintain sufficient resources on a rotating schedule. The rental and lease equipment, we captured savings by switching vendors when the copier contracts expired. Transportation, the new 5-year contract signed with Kosmeskis is an increase of $40 a day per bus. The current rate is $353 a day per bus. The new rate is $393 a day per bus. There are 11 buses total. The losing bid, just for comparison, was $450 a day per bus. Reallocation between elementary transportation and PVRS due to a percentage of student ridership, because there's a decrease in PVRS ridership and an increase in the elementary. Tuition, school choice and charter out, based on the governor's FY20 proposed budget, obligated to budget to this level. The Director of Finance anticipates expense being less due to 6 graduating school choice seniors, 1 graduating charter school senior.
This next sheet is just a summary of all those changes that the administrative staff made to this budget, totaling the $555,189. And the last slide in this presentation just talks about the Pioneer capital projects. These will be allocated out as part of the assessment that is voted on by the school committee on the 6th, based on each town's equalized values based on their tax rates that were just set for this year. We are replacing 3 rooms of carpet here at the high school at $8,000. And there is a Wi-Fi infrastructure update project that is going to happen. John, our technology director, has been working with the Tier 1, I believe, E-rate to accomplish this and going out for bids. The estimated total project cost is $60,000, of which they pay 60%, and the 40% remaining is the $24,000. And that will update the infrastructure here of the Wi-Fi to be able to support the one-to-one initiative for student devices. And like I said, these will be calculated and voted on by the school committee this next Wednesday.
Okay, so this is the question and answer portion of the evening. So if you have a question for anyone, you can talk to either of the mics on either side. Please let us know your name and what town you're from and what your questions or concerns are.
Hello, Tracy Rogers from Northfield. I'm wondering if you do vote later this spring to close an elementary school, where will those savings go? Will they go to reduce assessments or to restore services?
So, when if the school, Pearl Roads or Warwick were to close, the money would be used to put in E&D.
No.
Restore
So essentially, the idea is that we would look to reduce assessments, but there may be some restored services also looked at by the school committee, but that would be a school committee decision at that point in time based on the cuts that the administrative staff had made, if the school committee wishes to restore any of those at that time.
Hi, Deborah Potee, Northfield. I just have some questions about the elementary, restoring elementary music district-wide. Can you just explain that a little bit more to me? Because I want to fully understand it.
So this year, at the beginning of the year, obviously last year, the music position at the elementary schools were cut.
Yes.
We pushed to bring that position back. The position has been posted. We did have a strong candidate who we were expecting to hire about a month ago, who backed out the day they were going to come in and meet with me.
Right, I thought it was going to start in January.
Yeah, so we still have the position posted. We've reached out to some of the local colleges to see if they had any candidates. It's been put online, so we're waiting to still fill that position and keep that position next year as well.
So you would have the full-time instructional teacher, Ms. Snedeker or whomever, and then you'd have a half-time person too, is that correct?
Right, to help cover the services at the elementary schools.
And so if all 4 schools still exist, you would have music, and then you would still have the instruction for band.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's going to be restored to the original times of those sessions as well, because those had been cut.
Yes.
As part of this
And
project.
so it will be back to 45 minutes as opposed to half an hour. Is that
That's the intention at this point, if we
Right.
can find someone to fill the position.
great? Thanks very much for that. Can you just explain what clubs were no longer in sort of existence and thus saving some money?
I don't have that list with me, but off the top of my head, we no longer have the blacksmithing club because John Pasiglia
Yeah.
was here and he ran that. There was a assistant counselor or advisor for a particular club, something WITS off the top of my head, but.
As
Oh,
school
school
match
match wits.
wits.
Yeah,
there was an
so
assistant.
that was recommended that was no longer needed. The mock trial club hasn't run for a couple years, so that's still been budgeted, but we removed that. And there was one more, but we did consult with the principal to make sure that those were not intended to be restored. So that was in consultation with
So
the school
if there
principal.
were a teacher or anybody else who wanted to start a club, there's no money in the budget for something that could come back, like as schools match wits or mock trial.
So that program, the match wits or whatever,
High school
hasn't been
match wits.
removed. It just,
No.
there's an assistant currently, and that was removed.
Okay. And can you just explain about the guidance counselor, the half-time guidance counselor being gone?
Yeah, this is any position that has been reduced or eliminated. We've kept all required services based on IEPs and student needs. And so if there wasn't a need required, then we looked at that. And that was a half-time. It was a full-time position reduced to half-time based on student needs.
So is there now just 1.5 guidance counselors?
No,
in high school?
there's two guidance counselors and adjustment counselor. So it's
Right.
just reducing by half a position.
So there's one full-time guidance counselor and a half-time guidance counselor along with the school adjustment counselor.
There's a full-time guidance counselor for the 9th through 12th grade.
And a
full-time
half-time
And a
for-
full-time guidance counselor for the middle school, like 7th and 8th grade.
Uh-huh.
And then an adjustment counselor as well.
And then was there a half-time person then on top of that?
No, it's just one of the full-time positions moving to half-time.
So which one?
We can't
I don't
say
really,
that
I
at
don't
this
really
point
want
in
to,
time.
yeah.
Okay,
that,
so
yeah.
it's going to be 1.5.
It's going to be
It'd be
2.5.
2.5.
We currently have 3.
Right, 2.5, right. But the adjustment counselor, I'm an adjustment counselor. It's very different from a guidance counselor. So I don't see them all being the same thing. It's
They're
1.5.
budgeted in the same line for us,
right.
so that's what
I
we're
know,
referring to.
I know. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hi there, Tom White from Warwick. Couple of questions. First of all, my understanding there have been negotiations for teacher salaries, and I noticed in the elementary teachers and the upper teachers that it says for contractual obligations, but my understanding is negotiations have still been going on. Did you sort of guess at that, or have they already been resolved?
The negotiations were settled this week, so that's what these numbers reflect.
Great,
Yeah.
okay. The other question was the process when, after the loan is set with the state, about deciding about closing schools or not. What's the process that the school committee is going to go through there?
So once we know that the money is in our hands, in the district, then we can schedule a time for the school committee to discuss school closure and make decisions. Hopefully, it will be soon and that it will be easily done at a regularly scheduled meeting. Tanya, you might want to check in about timing if you know.
So just so you guys all kind of know where we're at with that deficit borrowing, we have all of our ducks in a row, if you will, because there's a lot of them with this deficit borrowing. We got our legal opinion, all the documentations have been sent to DOR. The bid has officially been put out, and I will be receiving bids on Tuesday, March 5th from 8:30 to 11 for the borrowing. And they anticipate that it will be issued by March 15th.
March 15th at the latest?
That is the issuance date right now. It could be issued prior to that.
Okay, because we have a meeting on the 14th. So
Yes. So we're hoping it's issued before that.
And I assume there would be plenty of notice for the towns involved in this, select boards and all that, when these discussions are going to happen?
Yeah, it would have to be posted as a potential vote on a meeting posting for
Okay.
a meeting, yeah. Yeah.
And then, does the whole budget need to be re-voted if you make those kind of changes?
So what will happen once those votes happen, whether it's the sixth grade moving up, whether it's Leiden closing, whether it's Warwick closing, or any combination of those, John and myself would get back together, as well as the principals and other administrative staff. And the way that I created the budget with the new infrastructure is essentially so we can literally copy and paste things from one school to another for those things that would be moved, if it was a school closure, as well as if the sixth grade moved up, or, you know, whatever that situation may be. And then that will be re-voted by the school committee and presented out to the towns with whatever those new assessments would be. What ideally I would like to see happen is that the school committee would be able to vote on those to give us enough time, to do that. And I want to be able to get it out to the town who has the first meeting on May 6th, at least 2 weeks prior, so that they can update their numbers before they post their town meeting warrant, so that we don't have to put this on the floor of the town meeting as an adjustment.
And this all needs to be done by the end of March, is that right?
That, I think, would be the ideal, because 2 weeks prior to May 6th would be around April 20th or so, so I'd need, you know, a good couple weeks to make those adjustments in the budget documents to have the school committee re-vote that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Renee Keir, Bernardston taxpayer. And I've been following this for quite some time, as you may recognize me from many meetings. Really wanted to come to it from a place of knowing, and so given the things that I know, and having followed it for 2 prior administrations, as things started to unravel, if you will, the history of the 2 larger towns subsidizing the 2 smaller towns in the district is just a reality. And so as a taxpayer, I just have a question for you around your choices for Bernardston Elementary School, the school with the lowest per cost pupil, the taxpayers, and so this is my concern as a taxpayer, when I see that there's now 6 IA reductions. And it's interestingly worded here. One is retiring. If you're not replacing it, it is a reduction. I understand that you've done your due diligence and you've spoken with special education and you're covering all the IAs. But also another concurrent fact to that is Bernardston Elementary School is the only level 1 school in the district meeting target. So the model being used at Bernardston Elementary School, where we have the lowest cost per pupil, is utilizing IAs, and you're purporting to now we will have only 1 IA in our town of Bernardston for our children. We will have 0 IAs above grade 1, or in grade 1 and above, to support the learning, which has obviously been an effective model for moving children forward, front-loading their needs and getting them what they need. So again, this is just me hoping to speak to the stakeholders that I always am amazed are not in the room. So maybe it doesn't affect anybody else. Maybe stakeholders are not affected as I am and feel this way. So I just want to put it in the room and put it in the atmosphere in the world, and see if any other taxpayers in Bernardston have this concern. So because this is a public hearing and this is the time to share my concern, I'm choosing to do it now because this is the time that it's appropriate to do so. So I thank you for your time. I understand that you've given this a go and it's very hard work and it's transparent. I just want people to understand what it means. And yes, you've created the optic that we have music and art, and those would have created an uproar if we hadn't had those, so that's great, because students need that. I'm not saying that at all. But again, taxpayers in the 2 larger towns are subsidizing this work. And I wish we could be, as I believe Mr. Knipe at one of the meetings pointed out, a district without borders, where we can truly think as a unit and do what's right for children. So thank you.
Renee, can I just comment on a couple of those just to kind of maybe clear some of that up and just maybe put your mind at ease a little bit? So as I mentioned before, part of the revising the regional agreement is to actually get so the towns are paying the percentage state and above minimum at their percentage of foundation enrollment, which captures all their students that actually live in their town that we're educating, whether it's in the district, whether those students are chartered out or choiced out, because right now, that is what's skewing the numbers for the towns as well, as you could see with the numbers I presented at the school committee meeting versus now. And in addition, because we are up against this budget crisis, what the administrative team, myself, John, principals, and special ed are trying to do is meet our mandates. But we've also heard a lot of concerns from the townspeople that why are we paying so much over what our required contribution is per student? So we're trying to meet in the middle with all of those things. And like I said, if we have these votes and we can restore some of those will be discussions that will be had administratively and with the school committee at that time.
Yeah, so I guess conversely, I have a similar thought that the state doesn't have borders on the district, so their flawed foundational budget is based on who lives in the district, not who lives in the town. So then you reallocate it to uneven for schools over just, doesn't matter what town they live in. I understand. At the Heart Committee, I feel like I heard from the consultants when I asked the question about what the flawed foundational budget is based on. It's about who's in your district, not who's in your town. But then I understand what you're saying, that the current district agreement puts it back to how many are in your town.
Right.
So therein lies the rub. I get that. And I also want to just comment further that the school choice debate that continues, again, in my mind, is flawed, because if we get $5,000 for a school choice student and the cost to educate that student based on state averages is $15,000, then we're trying to educate a student at the third of the cost of the actual cost. And if you have a building who's running at close to or at half of school choice, that math doesn't add up. So doesn't matter how many school choice you bring in over the third of the cost, that is not going to be viable, because you cannot meet your obligation at a third of the cost, no matter what you're trying to run, a business, a school, a farm, you're just not. So that's just my one person's thought who's given it a lot of thought.
Thank you.
I just want to respond to Renee for a minute. I have really appreciated how attentive you have been, Renee, and I always learn something from when you speak. And I think you spoke perfectly right then about your school, about how tightly you manage your school, how well you do in your school with the way you've allocated your staff. And I just want to say I really hear you, and I thought you spoke really well.
Hi, I'm Janice Starmer. I live in Warwick. I was on the school committee many years ago. I know the struggles. I know how much hard work you folks have put into this budget, and you've done a really good job, I think, cutting things. And I'm really pleased that you added a half-time position for somebody to write grants, because I think that's really key in garnering more money to get us through some hard times. I have a number probably of questions and concerns and comments. Oh, sorry. I feel that in a way we're getting pitted against each other because we're being squeezed. We're being squeezed by the fixed costs, which continue to grow, and we don't have any control over. And as a result, even in the best of times, the students get less and less for their education. And I've seen it over decades now of the struggles with the budget, and it was always a struggle. It was always a struggle to give the teachers a fair raise because of how poor we are out here. There's a number of things that come into this, health care, and how many special ed students you have in a town or a district. We have no control over that. However, the load, as far as I can tell, and I'm not well informed possibly, that a lot of that falls on the district to cover, that the states don't pay for that. The state doesn't pay that for us. They don't have a statewide program that allocates towns a fair amount for the mandates that they require. So that's just some thoughts. I think that one of the things I feel regretful about in the budget is that there are things that we can, savings that we will be garnering that aren't included in this budget because we haven't garnered them yet. And I think I would like to see what those savings potentially are, because I would hate to think that we are going to take the town's responsibility to educate their elementary school students in their own town away from them without really seeing the whole picture. What if it ends up that we can make it? Warwick, I know, and as the other towns, I don't know what it is, but we've always voted the school budget. We've always voted school budget increases. We're willing to cut. It seems like in our budget we've cut a lot. And we put a lot into that school. It's the heart of the town. People in Warwick are emotional about it. I'm emotional about it. It's only 20 years old. We worked really hard. We paid a lot of money to build that building. And I feel like it's being pulled away from us, and not for a very good reason. Personally, one of the things that Warwick's had trouble with is that we've had to use the art teacher and music teacher provided by the district. We have a lot of artists in town. I bet we could fund our own art program. I bet there'd be volunteers. But we're not allowed to do that because of some contract within the district that we need to have that art teacher, have that band instructor. That could be a savings for our town. And it seems to me like the contract that we have with the district as an elementary school, as a town, is being thrown out the window because of what has happened, that no longer is that being honored. The towns were guaranteed to have an elementary school in their town, and it's no longer being honored. That really disturbs me. And to tell the truth, if we had to suffer reducing something in town so that we could keep our school, we would. That's more important. We would write a grant to get a band teacher. Just because, you know, the district says, oh, we don't have money for a band teacher. Well, now you found money for it. I'm glad to hear that. But if there was things, athletic things that needed to be reduced, those are things that the PTO could do fundraising for. Those are things the students could do fundraising for. If we're throwing those out the window and instead just taking 2 schools away from their towns, I don't think that's fair. I think that's really unfair. Talk about sacrifices. This would be an enormous sacrifice for Warwick. Enormous. Think of it. I know the larger towns they feel they're supporting us. Maybe they're not going to be anymore. They're not losing their schools. We're losing a school. Moving students over to Northfield, that is not our school. We're being unfairly penalized.
Can I just say when you're talking about what those projections would look like, those were presented in the school committee meeting when we presented the budget to them on Tuesday night, and you should have that in the packet, because I know you were in attendance for that.
I was, and I wouldn't mind if you pointed out to me what page that
It's
was
not
coming
in this
on.
packet.
I know it is, and I'm looking for some other notes I have.
But it was probably 4 or 5 pages into the packet you received at the school committee meeting last week that showed about 6 or 7 different budget scenarios and showed what the percentage increase or decrease to the towns would be if those things did happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm concerned about bus rides. I'm concerned about what age groups are riding buses together without a monitor. I think I wouldn't want my kindergartner riding buses with much older kids without a monitor. What is the Warwick's portion of the deficit, that 1.6 something percent?
The 1.65% is the increase of assessments to the towns this year over last year. It's not a deficit.
Okay. What is Warwick's portion of that increase?
So in your
If it-
packet, under the town assessments, the second insert that you received, it shows what the new assessments are to the towns. And if you look at the second page of that breaks down the minimum contributions, the transportation, and the above minimum, the increase to Warwick is $20,795, which is a 2.51% increase over last year to Warwick. So last year, your assessment was $828,457. This year, it would be $849,252 with the budget that's before us tonight.
The budget that's before us tonight, if we were to pass that, Warwick's increased amount would be how much?
$20,795, and it's at the very bottom that has a comparison with 2019 to 2020.
That doesn't seem like very much money. If we could pay that to have our school kept open, that would be something that I think Warwick would support. If you take Warwick School away, what happens? Does that mean it goes away permanently, or is there ever an opportunity to have it back again?
I mean, schools can be reopened, but it's not typical.
Well, don't you think a town would cough up $20,000 if they could stay open? I think that's a small amount of money that we could raise or get out of our or some emergency fund in town.
So the issue isn't just 1 year. The issue is long-term sustainability of our district, and with rising fixed costs and mandates from the state, with a very slow-changing foundation budget coming from our governor's office, this district continues to be up against cutting $500,000 a year from our budget, and cutting these particular 2 schools, as hard as it may be for the school committee to vote, if that happens, that is a year-over-year savings and not some of these things the administrators are trying to do each year to keep this district sustainable. It would help us be sustainable long-term.
I didn't think that cutting the schools was going to make you sustainable long-term. I thought that it would get this budget passed this year, but after that, your savings would not be major.
So
They
the
would
savings,
decrease.
whatever the savings are in the first year, potentially actually increase, because if, say, staff is not replaced, the increases that we would have seen to those expenditures actually are an increase in savings to the school district each year, because not only have we cut them, but we're also not going to be consuming the increases of those expenses year over year.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's something we can talk about later. I feel we're being thrown.
Okay, Janice, we need to move on at this point.
Okay, I feel we're being thrown under the bus, and I don't think you really know what it feels like to lose a school in your town.
Hi, Diana.
Good evening. Boy, you've come a long way. Is this on?
Keep talking into it.
Okay. Thank you very much for all the hard work.
Tyler's going to go back and check it. It takes a second.
I could talk really slow.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Which one?
it's really hard to talk without saying much at all.
Ask him to shut up.
I think he's trying to turn it on. Do you want
Are you want,
There you
oh,
go.
there I
Yeah,
am.
he told me it would take him a minute to get
Yep.
back there if
Yep.
there was a problem.
Okay. I'm guessing that perhaps the reason there are only a few faces here, and maybe more are watching us online or will in the future, but this feels like a very early meeting in the process. There still is discussion of looking at those possibilities of moving the 6th grade or closing a school. And I would really, really, like I mentioned in the letter, I know it's a really hard question to ask, but I would love to hear about those plans as they develop and how that ties to the future. You know, how would any choices we make this year affect choices next year? And I think it's too early to ask that because I think you haven't made those decisions yet, but I would love to hear that. And it would make it a lot easier to support a budget at town meeting if there was more of a comprehensive picture of how that's going to look going forward. I know it's a hard ask, but you've done such amazing things already. I have full faith that, but I also, I feel like we're only halfway through. And I did not mention my name, is that what you're saying? Diana Noble, Warwick, also Finance Committee.
Can I
Diane,
just respond to that?
I was going to say, we have to present something to the towns for the budget by March 15th, so that is part of this public hearing process. We have to vote our budget, the school committee, and then we have to provide an assessment to them so that they can prepare their budget for town meeting. We can revise the budget at any given point in time, and the town has 45 days to accept that. But we're hoping, like I mentioned before, that we can get that to them in time to revise it before they actually present their town meeting warrant articles.
Yes, I understand that. It's just that one of my new roles this year is to speak to it. Warwick town meetings are thorough, to say the least, and sometimes quite interesting. And the only way that we can really, as a finance committee and as a town, evaluate it is, particularly if you're making some really hard choices, which you already have, is to know how it ties into the future. So it kind of feels like that this is a very important first step. You worked very hard to get to this step, but I feel like we're not there yet, that the real big story is yet to come. And if there isn't another public hearing or some sort of presentation of how that works together, it makes it really hard to have a full opinion, despite all of the meetings and the hard work. So I'd hate to see that.
I just want to say, Diana, I agree with you that if you could have been here a year ago, you wouldn't believe how far we've come.
I have a
There was
sense, yeah.
nothing to work with
Yeah.
a year ago. So now we have a foundation upon which to do that planning that does have to happen. I totally agree. Yeah.
Great. So thank you very much. Keep it up. Summer is coming.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Hi.
One second.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Well, I just want to make a comment to be sure that we all understand for the past many years that Bernardston and Northfield have been supporting these two schools so that we can stay open. Let's keep that in mind as well. I'm from Leiden. I don't want to close my school either, but I'm afraid it's going to happen. I don't know yet.
I was going to start somewhere else, but I'll start with, I think there is a lot of truth that the bigger towns have been putting in, for lack of a better word, subsidizing the smaller towns. Leiden is paying $19,942 per student. And Bernardston is paying $13,326. So we are, the smaller town, and Warwick is paying $16,331. So we are putting a little more per student. So I think it does balance out in a way, if you think of it that way. So I want to thank you so much for your transparency. This year, compared to the last couple years, it is like, this is a completely different process, it's been fantastic. Tanya, I think your transparency with the numbers has been great. I think it's been great for the towns and the faculty and the administration and the school committee and everyone. So I really appreciate this so much. And I like this budget. I like this administration budget. I think that you tried really hard to do what the towns ask you, which was a near impossible task. To tell you the truth, I kind of couldn't believe it when I was at your meeting a couple of days ago. So I'm gonna actually beg you, the school committee, to please not start putting a bunch of stuff back in this budget. Because I think with the loss of students this district has had, we need to go dial it way further back than anybody is comfortable with. This is further than I'm comfortable with. Because I know that there are losses. There are job losses in here. There are things that are not good for our communities in this budget. But I think that this is something we have to do to get to back to a baseline that we can work with. And I think that you've tried really hard to do that, and I appreciate it. I think, and as much as I hate to say it, I think it's time to close the doors on the Pearl Roads in Leiden. Mostly because the shape of the building is old. I think the rest of the towns need that money. I would like to see that any of those savings go back in a reduction in the assessments. I think you should move the 6th grade to the high school. I know we're not necessarily talking about all these today, but I think that's a great idea. And I trust that the administration and the faculty in this building will take care of those kids. And I know we have a lot more to talk about this in the future. Things that are on the table to collaborate with Gil Montague. I know they have issues of their own. I think, and we're going to be talking about this more soon, but I want to ask you again, maybe I'll beg you again, I will beg you to please have an open mind about what kind of collaboration we can have with Gil Montague, because I think that there are a lot of savings, potential savings in collaborating with them. And I'm not saying that we have to make a whole new district. That's a big thing down the road, but there are lots of things in between. I think it can save us money, and I think that we have to look at that and see what we can do before we close Warwick. Because that school is beautiful, it's in great shape, it's efficient. If I was running this district like a business, I wouldn't want to let go of that asset. So I would like to ask you to please look at what we can do with Gil Montague over the next year and find some savings in there and let Warwick live to fight another day. That being said, Leiden is picking up a third of the increase of $151,000. So I'm assuming that's because of our EQV went up so much.
So the EQV only pertains to your capital expenditures. The reason Leiden's percentage for minimum contribution is higher is potentially because you have choice students out of the district or you have a number of charter students. And it's a 5-year enrollment average in the district as well. So both of those things factor in. And like I said before, unfortunately, the minimum contribution percentage varies from the above minimum contribution, and that's where adjusting this regional agreement and me recommending that they both be foundation budget will hopefully get those things in line.
And I know that there's not anything that you can do about that, but I don't like it anyway. So I just want to put that out there because Leiden is picking up a third of this increase and losing a school. So I really don't like it. But again, I know there's nothing that you can do about that. So thank you so much.
I'd like to add just a point that you brought up about collaborating with Gil Montague and other districts. I've been meeting really since I started with other superintendents. I've been providing information to other superintendents, other districts. They've been providing information to us. The consultants we provided information to. So we're looking at every option to see what's the most beneficial to the district. So really we're actively, I just talked to Mike Sullivan last week from Gil Montague and Rick Martin from Franklin Tech. So we're looking at everything. I said at Tuesday's meeting, I even reached out to Kosmeskis about our special ed transportation, and we're looking at maybe sharing some of that with other districts' routes that would cut down the cost to our district. So we have been working with other superintendents, and we're open to all ideas that would help our district and other potentially other districts. So that's ongoing work that's continuing. So I just wanted to add that point. That was a good one you brought up.
Hi, Deborah Potee, Northfield. I didn't say the other thing I wanted to say, so I apologize for coming back up here. I was here a lot last spring, a year ago, and for those of you who were not, and I think the woman from Warwick was talking about saving $27,000. I watched the school committee, some of you are still on the school committee, desperately looking for any amount of money they could cut, including the entire student budget in terms of extracurricular activities here at the high school. And that $14,000 looked amazingly good to them one night in June, when I must have been the only parent here they wanted to get rid of. My concern is that we don't ever go back there again to that evening. And I guess I just want to be able to say that desperate attempt to save money by slashing this and slashing that, I really hope that is something that's never going to happen again. Do you guys remember that night?
I'd like to add to that too, because in this budget we looked very carefully, and there's a lot of work and consideration really in a lot of individual students in classrooms. This doesn't cut any academic programming, any sports programming, music, arts. So I think we've done our due diligence and really did, thank you, and really, took a look at how we can keep our district strong academically and strong for our students, because that's why we're all here, is for our students. And so we wanted to present something that didn't take any of that away from them and what they deserve. So.
Right. And I guess I speak too as a taxpayer, and the long-term, look at trying to save money, and as hard as it is to close both schools, I will say it's going to go a long way in making people think that you all are taking this seriously. The fact that there are so few students in those two schools, many of them won't go on to the high school, they'll just go back, the school choice kids will just go back to Mahar. That's very short-term thinking, and I just think we really do need to think of us as a district and not think one school is better than the other, or the bus ride from Warwick is going to be something that we can't manage. I mean, it's a very homogeneous community with lots of very concerned, interested, engaged students and teachers, and I just really think we need to think of things differently than we do. I think it's a luxury to have a little school in every single town. I just do. And maybe it's easy for me to say coming from Northfield, but I've spent a ton of time thinking about this. And if it were the best interests for this district to close all 4 elementary schools and put everyone in to this building, I would go for that in a heartbeat, because I would want the school to be the very best school it possibly could be. And unless something shifts, that's where I see it going, So anyhow, thank you.
Good evening. Olivier Flagolet, Warwick, taxpayer as well, and a parent of 2. I hope they will be here in a couple of years. I hope you guys make it. I have several questions. I heard some frustrations a few days ago about 5 years contract offered to you, Mr. Skagel. I don't know what to think of it myself, but I'm curious about, I would like to ask the school committee about the rationale behind, if you could explain to me why you decided to offer a 5-year contract. Or did you vote on that, or do you have nothing to do with this?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So,
Thanks.
so yeah, it is the school committee's vote. So we did vote that contract. It was, I mean, people can speak for themselves, but I'll, so I will tell you, it was a unanimous vote. It was, we had completed a mid-cycle evaluation of our new superintendent right before we voted. It was an honoring of his desire to make a long-term commitment to the district, as well as our desire for stability and leadership going forward. I think there is some concern out there that this contract means that we as a district won't be open to or flexible in the face of potential collaboration with other districts for long-range planning. And I'll let Superintendent Schedule speak to that himself, but we have had conversations, he and I. And I trust Superintendent Schedule to do what's best for the district. And I believe that that's what will happen. The collaboration conversations that are happening are continuing. They are new and they are tentative, and the work ahead is long for further collaboration, but there is nothing that we are doing to block that. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, as part of the, I know there's a lot of discussion about the Gil Montague collaboration, and yeah, I've talked to Steve Hemmon, one of the consultants, and asking him about how the central office might look if reconfigured. And they're studying that more now, but he made it very clear that it would require one superintendent and one assistant superintendent, one in one, Gil Montague section district, and one here. So there would be a superintendent and assistant superintendent as well. So I know that's probably a few years down the road. He projected, at the earliest, maybe that might be 2 to 3 years from now. I can't give an exact timetable. Maybe that would be sooner. But we're exploring all options to do what's best for the district. So if that means collaborating or merging, if that's what everybody decides to do at some point, then I'm going to provide all the information and work just as hard to get that information to everybody, and then let the decisions be made. But I feel that's a big part of my job, is to provide and do as much research and provide as much information as I can on any topic. Just like the solar panels, for example. I went out, I met with companies, we looked at solar panel options, we presented it. The decision was made to not pursue that right now, and that's okay, because at least I've done my due diligence, I've explored opportunities and options and brought it forth that then others can look at, analyze, and take a vote on what they feel is best. So I'll continue to do that, and have been, with not only Gil Montague, but other surrounding districts as well, and collaborating, whether it's transportation or shared services. We're really looking at everything. So, I think my objective is to always do what's best for the students and what's best for the district and the towns. And so this budget's a reflection of, we've heard the towns, we've heard the students and the parents not wanting to cut academic programs, and this is what this is a reflection of. Is it ideal? No, but I think as a district, if we want to move forward, then we need to really make hard decisions and be responsible how we move forward and keep all options open. So I'll continue to do that in every way I can, and always put the district first.
I believe that you have the right intentions. Thank you. I have another question of a complete different nature. Do you know approximately the number of special need children in the district?
Chris, do you have that number? Is it 100, is it 170-ish? I think it's around 170 students.
It's about 25.
So let's say 160. Okay. Thanks. Another question. Contractual obligation. If you were to add them up, I don't know if it's, I guess that question would be for you. And I don't know if you can answer, just approximately. If you were to just think of the step increases due to these obligations over a period of 1 year, what would be that sum? What would be that amount?
I don't have the document currently in front of me, but I want to say, excuse me, approximately $250,000 roughly. And that's an estimate. I can get you, because we have all the calculations and spreadsheets and things that we did as we went through the negotiations process. And I do have those calculations. Unfortunately, we do have staff changes every year, whether someone leaves or retires, and that has implications on what step our teachers are at, which differentiates what their step increases are. So it's not going to be an exact, but I can provide you with an estimate if you want to email me and I can reply to that.
Yeah. Is there a difference between step increase and cost of living?
Yes.
So should I understand that you should also add the cost of living?
That's a combined calculation. So the step increases are union obligated.
Yeah.
They're on a step schedule based on their years of service to the district, and then the cost of living increases what that step schedule is multiplied by going into the next year. Does that make sense?
I think so, and you would be able
Yes,
to
I can
provide
give
me
you
with
that
the
information.
number.
At least an estimate. Like I said, it's depends on the teachers and where their steps are, because a part of the step schedule has a certain percent increase and the other half is a little bit higher as the teachers go along. But we do have an estimate of those costs as we were looking at what different percentages cost our district. So I
Yes.
can get that to
Now,
you.
despite the projected savings from closing schools, are you confident that with enrollment going down year after year, unfortunately, are you confident that the district can sustain these step increase and adjustment of cost of living?
We have a lot of combined increases each year, but some of the things that John is doing, and he can speak to this more too, is not only monitoring and trying to control other fixed costs, but to bring in other revenue into the district as well.
So I think that's where our district has really been behind, is in creating any kind of new revenue, over the past several years. So, one example is the new collaborative programs, one to be housed at Northfield Elementary and one here, that could potentially, bring in at half capacity, maybe $150,000 a year, at full capacity, over $300,000 a year. We locked into fuel savings much earlier this year for next, which wasn't done in the past. We saved quite a bit of money there as well. I bring up the solar panels again. We're looking at ways that we can, and a lot of work was done by the Green Communities Grant to save on, new transformers and D-strat fans. So there's a lot of work, insulation. There's a lot of work being done that hopefully we can't realize it now, but next year we'll realize, some of those savings. And so we're looking at creating new streams of revenue. Even with the Coca-Cola, the vending machines, they're donating 100% of the profits, and it goes back to our lunch fund. And so that helps there. They're also giving us money for our technology programming. We've reached out to companies and donating technology programs. So we're always looking at creating new sources of revenue as well as saving at the same time to make us as efficient as possible. I've also reached out to Vernon, and we got roughly $16,000 per student there when they come, and they're very excited about the things that we're doing. And so I anticipate, I'm hoping that we get more Vernon students. Even Irving is possibly setting up a tuition agreement with Irving like they have with Gil Montague right now. So instead of receiving the $5,000 school choice, we could potentially receive more in tuition. So they came here and visited. I just went to the school a few weeks ago. They're also excited. And some of the collaboration with Greenfield Community College and potential grants that we can share with them. They're interested, as am I, is looking at our new makerspace and making that an innovation center. And there are grants that we've discussed that we're hoping to apply to that could potentially redo that and provide our, that innovation center with new resources, new technology. That would be all grant funded. So we're looking at all avenues to either collaborate or bring in different sources of revenue to help our district, while at the same time being as efficient and financially responsible as we possibly can, while meeting all the needs of the students.
Right. It seems like you have a lot on your plate. One last thing, more of a thought that I want to share with you about sixth graders moving here. It's a tricky one. There's a lot of there's different school of thoughts about this, and I guess it all depends on the developmental stage of your own kids. And I don't think it's a cut and dry philosophical decision that one can make or have since it's a tender age. I don't know if it would be even possible for you to do that, but my idea is perhaps you could leave the choice as opposed to create a mandate. You might be surprised at the number of parents who may decide to keep the kids in their own elementary school. I don't know if it's a possibility, and it might seem to be more complicated than what you would want, but I just thought I would throw it out there.
Right. Yeah, and we'll look at all options. I mean, we're, sixth grade is tough. I mean, I have 4 kids myself. I have 2 7th grade graders and 2 5th graders. I see a lot of benefits personally into the 6th grade, moving up to like a true middle school model. It would help our existing 7th and 8th grade model as well. But as a parent, I understand that too, that can be a, kind of a decision that can't be made lightly, and because, but it does, could affect the students. So as we're discussing this and planning this and bringing it forward with information, we would definitely have the administrators and myself maybe have an hour and a half here where parents could come in and ask questions. We could kind of explain how the model might look. But we're open to all ideas, so I appreciate your thoughts here tonight. So that hasn't all been ironed out. I know there are 44 5th graders that potentially would move up to 6th grade. And the initial thought is to have 2 classrooms where the students would receive all their academic classes, just going from back and forth between those 2 classes. And then either having their specials, phys ed, art, music as a 6th grade, or possibly maybe integrating with the 7th grade. Maybe some of their friends that had moved up to Pioneer that they haven't seen, it'd be nice to get them into class. So we haven't fully worked all of that out, but I do appreciate that your concern for bringing the 6th grade up. I can appreciate that as a parent myself, so thank you.
I sense you will do your best, and I also see the advantage, as you explained a couple of nights ago, of having more people coming here to PVRS in order to improve some of the activities. At the same time, you would be putting away from the elementary school a whole section that also brings something to the school. And here I'm going to speak on behalf of the school where my kids are in Warwick. And I think it's important because we all think that Warwick is a special school, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's not because we think it's a level 1 school. I think it's because there is a 6th grade that has been fully integrated, thanks to Miss Musgrave and also the previous principal, in such a way that kindness has been at the forefront of everybody, but also acceptance between the 6th graders and the 1st graders and 2nd graders and 3rd graders, which I think is a perspective that 6th graders also need to keep in mind. They're looking up to being older, yes, especially with social medias. They need to be reminded that they need to keep looking down and care for their peers, younger brothers and sisters. I think it's a very important thing to be able to nurture, especially in this society here.
Right, and to that point, even here, especially last year as a teacher here, and when you talk about like the older students kind of taking care of the younger students, I really saw it among special ed students that we had, that were seniors, really took to some of our special needs students and that were either in middle school or in high school. And if you just walk around the hallways here, like I do, you can't get a better student body. I mean, they're so caring and kind to each other. So I think that's reflective not only in the elementary schools, but also here at the middle and high school. They're they look out for each other. There's if somebody's lost, or I see new students come in at the beginning of the year, and the older students are walking them to class or pointing them in the right direction. It's really a fantastic environment. So again, I appreciate that, because I know it happens at the elementary schools, and it happens here as well. So yeah, we have a great student body all around.
Thank you very much.
Lauren Clary, I'm a Leiden resident. I also wear a couple other hats. I have 2 children that attend Bernardston Elementary School, and I'm also a teacher there, so I have lots of different perspectives. One, I wasn't going to bring up my thoughts about 6th grade, but being that I've taught grades 5 and 6 at Bernardston Elementary School over the last 8 years, I'm tossed myself back and forth between what is the right thing to do about moving 6th grade. I would hope that since there are lots of perspectives and lots of opinions out there, that we can find the appropriate amount of time for the public to be able to voice their questions and concerns about this, as we a little bit did tonight, as we have given those voices and concerns about closing schools and what that does, because I do think it's much more than just moving a group of children from one place to another. It does affect the school culture. I do think it's a tricky age. Some are ready, some aren't. I've seen many of both over the years. So I just hope that as a district we can find a public opportunity to be able to weigh the different options for parents. I know within our building at Bernardston that there have been several families over the last few years who have actually choiced to our district, to Bernardston, because it did have 6th grade in it. So that's something to consider too, that there are a lot of districts around here that don't have that. So that also is a little bit of a carrot for some families to keep their students in the 6th grade in elementary. But my original reason for coming up here is a little bit of a worry that I have when we present not cutting any academic programs, when, speaking specifically from my building in Bernardston, when IAs are on the cutting block. It's not my opinion alone in that the IAs, that the way that we are using them is a huge, huge important role in an academic program. We do not have small class sizes in our building. We have a 6th grade that's currently 27 students big. My 5th grade is 18 students large, but I'm alone all day, and it is quite challenging with our curriculum demands and what we're expecting of children. So I just want to be careful that the public to realize that cutting IAs is cutting an academic program. I also have a little bit of worry about when I see guidance being cut and what that looks like if it does include an adjustment counselor. For, again, in our building, our adjustment counselor is also a huge part of what makes us work.
We have increased needs every single year with students, and my worry in the educator role, being a mom that has 2 children in that building, is we have these increased needs, we have these increased pressures, we have numbers that do increase. Ours increased at the upper grade because Leiden joined us this year. Yet we're cutting support staff that also help these students academically as well as emotionally when we're trying to figure things out. So I am wondering also, the adjustment counselor, what that looks like. I don't know if that's where the cut is in guidance or what that will look like. I guess it's not a question, it's more as a comment, and that's a big worry that I see in looking at this current budget. Thank you, and thank you for the clear presentation.
Clyde Perkins, Warwick, on the Finance Committee in Warwick. I'm sitting here today and was here Tuesday night also, listening and trying to get a handle on this. I realize you've all worked very hard in what you've done, but I have not heard anybody yet really address the real problem we have here. And the real problem, the way I see it, is we have less and less students, and we're spending more and more of our resources to educate them. And the gap is just getting wider and wider. The projection is for the school population to decrease even more. The projection is, budget here, gone up. The projection for next year goes up more. Now, how do you propose to fix this problem? We cannot, as a society, continue to spend more and more of our resources on less and less of our population. Now, how you do that? You have an opportunity here now that we're all up against a wall to come up with new ideas, new ways of doing things. And the only way that I can see that this happens is you cut the expenses of operating the system. This is what industry has had to do when they could not continue to make a product that people could afford to buy. And you are putting out a product now that we cannot afford to buy. And this has to be addressed. That requires a whole different way, probably, of educating our children. We have an internet system now that, to me, could eliminate pretty near all of your professional teachers, where you basically only need babysitters, monitors in the room. Where they have automated industry, you're going to have to automate schools, because we just cannot keep going in this direction. And this is not a new subject that's come up. It's been coming up quite a bit, but it's really, really hit the wall here now. And I think it's time that the real problem is addressed. And thank you for listening to me.
Good evening. My name is Steve Nestenpower. I'm a Bernardston resident. I'm also on the Finance Committee. I've been sitting here listening to everyone and taking in and trying to understand their experiences. And I'd like to share with you mine. I've been a resident of Bernardston after retiring. I've been here 4 years and 10 months. During that time, my monthly taxes in the 4 years and 10 months have increased over $100 a month. I have no children in PVRS. I'm wondering where the break point is. I'm wondering, as my immediate predecessor said, when with decreasing student populations, when is our overall cost going to stop or decrease? This afternoon, I spent the afternoon on DESE's website. Our superintendent mentioned he's been talking to Gil Montague. Why would Gil Montague, who has a per student cost of nearly $4,000 less than ours, want to hook up with us? I looked at Maha. They're $3,000 less. I looked at Greenfield. They're nearly $5,500 unit costs per less. Sitting on the finance committee, Bernardston is at the breaking point. We right now face a possible 2.5% override. It's not going to pass. When does this stop? Are you determined to push one or more towns into bankruptcy? Because that's what this is going to come down to. Thank you.
Brian Herview, Bernardston, also on the Finance Committee. I'm going to follow that same direction because facts don't care about feelings. And the fact is, this is a hole that we've been trying to fill up with money for a long time. It just never gets filled. Bernardston, I know for a fact, for many, many years, have always asked for no increase. And every year you come back with an increase. I don't know what you're going to do, but I agree with Stephen. We have people now putting homes on the market, and they're moving out of town. Now I know they still have to pay their property tax. Interestingly enough, I spoke to a person today who said they won't pay it. It would take years for the town to take it due to lack of paying taxes, and by then it would be sold. This is what people are facing. There is potential for homes to be just abandoned. I don't think that'll happen. I'm just saying that there is the potential for that. We have an aging population. More and more people, their incomes are getting fixed because they're aging. And I fear those people may have to move out of the town that they grew up in, that they raised families in. Bernardston, like Stephen said, was going to face a 2.5 override. We can't even afford to pay some of our employees minimum wage, and yet we negotiate a superintendent contract we can't afford. That's insane. We have a guy that retired from our town working 25 plus years for that town, and he left making $22 an hour. That, to me, is disgusting. Thank you.
Hi there again. I had a question on the elementary administration. It talks about the principal at Warwick becoming a stipend model. Can you explain more about what that means?
So it means, and this was in collaboration with Elizabeth, looking at that position as not a half-time or full-time principal, but more of we have current staff that have administrative certification, that are interested in pursuing administration, that might be interested in maybe being a half-time teacher and then a half-time principal, and looking at that as more of a stipend position, much is done in smaller schools around the area where they have like a lead teacher in the school. There's always got to be, a principal assigned to that school or working with that school. But we look at it more as a stipend position. Like Bob has a stipend position for Pearl Roads. He's the principal of Bernardston. But this would be not a shared principal like Northfield to Warwick, but Warwick having their own principal. Just with the number of students, it would be more of a stipend position rather than a half-time or full-time. And again, this was done in consultation with Elizabeth, and looking at restructuring, when we're looking at restructuring some of the schools or staffing, or, so that this was, the idea behind it was to make it more of a position that was, not a full-time or even a half-time, but more of a stipend position. And hopefully we could potentially find that candidate either within that school or within our district, because there are a lot of highly qualified teachers that are obtaining their administrative certifications, so that might be a good opportunity for somebody.
I understand, and I understand it's a tough situation, and we've got to make the cuts. I just think that I wish in a way she hadn't suggested it, because she is an excellent principal for that school, not only as Olivier was commenting for the kids, but for the staff. She gets people to work beyond their job description to make the whole school work. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I just think that people should have their eyes open as to what's happening.
Right.
And
and
she's going to be
also-
very hard shoes to fill.
Yeah, and she would move into the .3 ELL position, which it happens to be based at Warwick, and she could potentially serve as a mentor, and she's offered that to whoever that position would go to.
There's one other point I want to bring up, and I also wanted to say that you guys are doing a great job, and it is light years from last year, and it's a tough position, and you can hear the emotion that's here among people, and I see that there's three competing things going on here. One is the assessments, the other is school closures, and the third is maintaining the programs that need to be there. And those are three arguments that I keep hearing over and over. And I bring that up because once the loan is approved, there's more decisions that got to be made. And I encourage you to make that as an open process with the towns, with the select boards, the finance committees. It may take 2 meetings, it may take a forum, whatever. But I think being as transparent and open is what's going to make it the best. And it's not going to be easy. There are going to be choices that people aren't going to like. But, I trust in you guys to do it well.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to suggest that we adjourn. Do I have to make a motion to adjourn? Is it a formal meeting? We're going to make a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you for coming tonight. Thanks for participating with us.
Hey, this is hang on to it.